His body was upside down, wedged deep inside a chimney. No clothes, no signs of trauma. Just bones hidden for 7 years inside a house just down the street from where he lived. They ruled it an accident. But let me ask you something. Who folds their clothes, walks into an abandoned cabin, and climbs into a chimney head first, never to be seen again? This is the story of Joshua Maddux. And if you ask me, the truth is still trapped in that chimney. I still remember the feeling the first time I read about Joshua Maddux. It was like a punch in the chest, not because of how he died, but because of how normal everything seemed at first. It was a spring morning in 2008. 17-year-old Josh told his sister he was going for a walk. Nothing strange, just some fresh air. That was the last time anyone saw him. No argument, no struggle, no goodbye. He just vanished. Joshua wasn't the type to disappear. Ask anyone who knew him. He was a thoughtful, quiet kid, played guitar, wrote in his journal, loved nature. He had dreams of becoming a writer, maybe traveling the world. No drugs, no fights, no signs of depression. His family didn't panic at first. Maybe he went camping. Maybe he was at a friend's place. He liked being alone sometimes. But when the sun set that night and he still wasn't home, something inside his father shifted. He knew something was wrong. For 7 years, Joshua Maddux was listed as a missing person. Flyers faded in store windows. Leads went cold. And slowly, people began to stop asking. His father never gave up, but the world moved on. The woods around Woodland Park were searched. Rivers were combed. Nothing. No remains, no evidence, no answers. And then in the summer of 2015, a construction crew began tearing down an old cabin just a few blocks from the Maddux home. What they found inside turned Joshua's case from a tragedy into something much darker. The crew was just doing a routine teardown. The cabin had sat abandoned for years, weather-beaten, boarded up, forgotten. But when one of the workers stepped near the chimney, he caught a smell. And then something worse. Inside the narrow brick shaft wedged deep in the flue were human remains. A full skeleton, curled upside down. No shoes, no shirt, no obvious signs of violence. Just bones. Hidden for 7 years. In a cabin not more than a few minutes' walk from Joshua's front door. The body was sent for testing. And when the results came back, it was him, Joshua Maddux. Let's talk about what they found and what they didn't. Joshua was upside down in the chimney. His feet pointed toward the sky. His head buried down in the fireplace. His clothes were not on him. They were inside the cabin, folded neatly. Shirt, pants, socks, even his underwear. There was no sign of a struggle. No broken bones. No trauma. No blood, and yet somehow he was dead, inside a chimney, in his own neighborhood. The coroner's ruling, accidental death. They said he climbed in, got stuck, died of dehydration or hypothermia. But tell me this, what kind of 17-year-old folds his clothes and dives headfirst into a chimney? This is where things start to feel off. The cabin wasn't just some empty house. It had an owner, a man named Phil. People in town knew him, not well, but they remembered him. Phil was a drifter, a strange guy, always on edge, said creepy things, never stayed long in one place, never had a steady job. And before he disappeared, he told more than one person something sickening. He bragged casually that he once put a body in a chimney. At the time, people thought it was a messed up joke. But after Joshua was found, nobody was laughing. So here's what Phil allegedly said years before Joshua's body was ever discovered. He told an acquaintance, "If you ever smell something coming from the chimney, don't worry. It's just a dead guy I stuffed in there." Word for word. At the time, it sounded like some disturbing nonsense. Phil said a lot of things like that. People didn't take him seriously. But after Joshua was found, that comment hit different. Too specific. Too similar to what actually happened. And it had been said before the body was ever found. So let me ask you, what kind of person says that if they're not hiding something? Now let's go back to the scene. The chimney where Joshua was found, it wasn't wide open. There was no clean vertical drop. There was a steel rebar barrier inside it, like a cross-shaped grate designed to keep animals from crawling in. It should have blocked anyone from entering more than a foot or two. And yet, Joshua's body was all the way down, fully inside, curled up, wedged. So here's the question no one could answer. How did he get past the barrier? And why didn't the coroner mention any of this in the official report? Now let's look at the cabin itself. It had been locked up for years. Windows boarded shut, doors sealed. No signs of forced entry. No footprints, no handprints, nothing. So if Joshua entered the house on his own, how? If he got inside, why wouldn't he just leave the way he came in? And then there's the strangest part, his clothes. They weren't ripped or dirty. They were folded, placed neatly on the floor near the fireplace, like someone undressed him, or like he undressed himself, for a reason no one can explain. What 17-year-old takes off his clothes, folds them up, and climbs into a chimney? None of it makes sense, unless someone else was there. The coroner's report called it a tragic accident. Said Joshua probably climbed into the chimney himself, maybe trying to sneak inside the locked cabin. He got stuck, panicked, and died slowly from dehydration or exposure. But almost no one bought that. For starters, why would a teenager sneak into an abandoned house that no one cared about? Why fold his clothes before doing something so reckless? And again, that steel barrier in the chimney should have made it physically impossible. But the coroner never mentioned the grate, never addressed the folded clothes, never explained how he supposedly got into a sealed house. It felt like they just wanted the case to go away. And for a while, it did. Joshua's father, Mike Maddux, never accepted the official story. He said it flat out, "My son would never do something like that." This wasn't some troubled teen sneaking around. This was a grounded, thoughtful, clear-headed kid. He didn't drink, didn't do drugs. He wasn't running away. He wasn't chasing thrills. Mike believed his son had been put in that chimney. And the folded clothes, that was the part he could never get over. Even the wildest theory couldn't explain that. He started asking questions, but no one in law enforcement seemed interested in reopening the case. To them, it was already solved. To the family, it had only just begun. That's when the internet stepped in. True crime forums, Reddit threads, Facebook groups. Strangers who had never met Joshua were now obsessing over every detail. People began analyzing the structure of the chimney, digging into Phil's criminal record, even building digital models of the cabin to prove he couldn't have gotten in alone. And the more people looked at it, the more obvious it seemed that something was being covered up. Some believed Phil killed him. Others thought Joshua stumbled onto something, maybe a drug stash or a squatter, and was silenced. There were even theories about a local police cover-up. One thing united everyone. No one believed it was an accident. Phil never fit in. He drifted into Woodland Park in the early 2000s. No family, no real job. Locals described him as odd, paranoid, prone to violent outbursts. He owned the cabin where Joshua was found, but rarely stayed in it. And the timeline? That's where it gets chilling. He was living in that cabin in 2008, the same year Joshua disappeared. Shortly afterward, Phil left town suddenly, left the cabin abandoned, moved around, got into more trouble. But here's the kicker. A few years later, Phil was arrested in New Mexico for stabbing a man during a fight. He had a history of violence, and he just so happened to own the chimney where a teenager's body was hidden for 7 years. Coincidence or something else? Now listen closely to this next part because it's one of the most overlooked, disturbing pieces of the puzzle. A man who had known Phil came forward after the body was found and said this. He told me once he had put a body in a chimney. That wasn't just a vague story. It was a specific location, a method, and it was said before Joshua's body was ever discovered. It should have been treated like a confession, but police dismissed it. They said there wasn't enough evidence to tie Phil directly to Joshua's death. Just think about that for a second. Someone bragged about putting a body in a chimney, and then a body is found in his chimney, and that's still not enough. Let's walk through the timeline again. May of 2008, Joshua leaves for a walk and vanishes. Phil is still living in the cabin at that time. By early 2009, Phil is gone. The cabin is locked up and left to rot. Nobody enters for years. So when could Joshua have climbed into that chimney? It had to be during a narrow window, a few months, maybe less. And remember, the chimney had a steel grate inside. No one ever reported it broken. No one reported anyone sneaking in or out. And still, his body ends up inside, in perfect silence, without a trace. Almost like someone didn't want him to be found. Some people still cling to the accident theory, but they've changed the shape of it. They say maybe it wasn't Joshua alone. Maybe he was with someone, a friend, or someone he trusted. Maybe they dared him to climb the chimney as a joke. A stupid prank. A thrill-seeking moment gone horribly wrong. Then when he got stuck, they panicked, ran off, left him there. But that still doesn't explain the folded clothes, the steel grate deep inside, or why he never yelled loud enough for help. If it was a prank, why did it look so much like a cover-up? Let's say the worst theory is true. Let's say Phil, already unstable, already violent, did something unthinkable. Joshua walks past the cabin, maybe peeks inside, maybe says something that sets him off. And Phil snaps. It wouldn't be the first time he attacked someone. He later stabbed a man in New Mexico viciously in a paranoid rage. It's part of his history. Maybe he overpowered Joshua. And when it was over, he needed a place to hide the body. The chimney. It was the one place no one would look. A dark, narrow grave, buried inside a house that didn't even look lived in. This is the theory that chills me the most. That Joshua Maddux wasn't just hidden, he was meant to disappear. His death wasn't random or reckless or even impulsive. It was intentional, calculated. That cabin boarded up, locked tight, chimney sealed became his tomb. And maybe, just maybe, the only reason he was found at all was because of dumb luck. A random construction job, 7 years later. If that crew had never gone in, would anyone have ever known what happened? Or would Joshua Maddux have stayed trapped in that chimney, forever lost to silence? As of today, Joshua Maddux's death is still listed as an accident. No charges, no reopened case, no official suspect. Just a 17-year-old boy remembered as kind, quiet, full of dreams, and found dead in the most impossible place. Phil, the one person who might have had answers, is gone. He died years ago in another state. and with him, any truth he might have confessed is buried forever. The investigation closed. But for those who knew Joshua, that word accident feels like an insult, a shortcut, a way to move on without really solving anything. Because the truth is, nobody climbs into a chimney and dies like that by mistake. The cabin has since been torn down, but the chimney, they say it still stands, just brick and shadow. A relic of a boy whose story never got closure. And maybe that's why this case keeps living online, why people won't stop talking about it. Because deep down, we know something went wrong here. We know someone knows more. And we know this was never just an accident. So I'm asking you now, was this a tragic misadventure? Or a murder that was buried, sealed in brick, and forgotten? Go ahead, tell me what you think. Because Joshua Maddux can't speak anymore. But that chimney still whispers.